Welcome to the Living a Nordic Life podcast, where we explore a simpler, cosier and more intentional life the Nordic way. I'm Fiona McKenna, your Nordic living guide and founder of Living a Nordic Life, where I share all things Nordic living and show you that a Nordic life is the way to bring intentional calm and healthy habits into your own life, wherever you are in the world. Are you looking for ways to bring simplicity, coziness and calm into your life? Well, let me show you how. Visit the Living a Nordic Life website to explore how I can help you on your journey to simple, healthy and happy calm, the Nordic way. You can subscribe to the podcast right here. And if you want regular inspirational emails sent with love from Norway and straight to your inbox, don't forget to subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters. And so now let's dive into our episode. Hello, let's talk about wild swimming, and more specifically the Nordic obsession with wild swimming. There comes a point in every summer, actually every spring to be honest, late spring, when I find myself standing at the edge of a fjord or a lake or the sea, watching sensible people do something that appears completely irrational. The sun is shining, the air is warm, and summer has kind of arrived, or we think it's arrived, after what's felt like about 8 months of darkness, snow, rain, slush, ice, all the things that the Nordic winter throws at us. But the water is still absolutely freezing, and sometimes it even has ice on it. It takes quite a few months to warm up, actually, and the beginning of the spring and the summer is when it's at its coldest. It's at its warmest at the end of the summer and the beginning of the autumn. But it isn't just a bit chilly or a bit refreshing. It's absolutely freezing. And it's the sort of cold that makes your ankles immediately question your life choices. Do you know when your feet go blue and you look down and you think, oh my God. But still, people one by one launch themselves in. This is when you realise that wild swimming in the Nordic countries isn't simply a summer activity, it's practically a personality trait. Everybody does it. Everybody can swim as well. I wasn't raised with wild swimming. It sounds quite exotic, doesn't it, wild swimming? Growing up for me, swimming usually involved a heated pool, a changing room, definitely, or somewhere to get changed, and that kind of comforting knowledge that nobody was voluntarily entering glacial meltwater. Occasionally we'd swim in the sea if we went to visit my grandparents at the beach, or a nicely landscaped French lake, but rarely in wild lakes and rivers. Certainly not things that didn't have a beach and a pontoon and stuff to get down to. The first time that I came to Scandinavia was in the year 2000. I was running my own business and it was an event management company. And I did events all over the world, and I had to go and look at the places that we would be using, hotels or destinations or whatever, for my clients, because I couldn't sell something that I hadn't seen and experienced. It sounds very glamorous, but actually it was quite hard work because I was working all through the week, and then every weekend I was travelling and working in between as well over those weekends. So it was not very much sleep, I have to say. But at the time, I'd been invited to a very exclusive small group event where we were going to go on this familiarisation tour of Uppsala, which is just north of Stockholm. And it was luxury hotels, really. It's sort of places that you would expect directors' meetings to be held at. Some of the other guests were English. There were probably about 8 of us. And our hosts were Swedish, of course. We stayed one night in this really beautiful rural manor house. It was just what you would expect of a Swedish manor house. It was white and big, not wooden, it was stone, but it was painted and it was in a sort of U shape in that kind of typical Swedish manor house style. It would have had the stables on the kind of U and the main part was the house with a courtyard in the middle. But it was set on the banks of this lake and it was forested and it was quite kind of out of the way. But we'd all had a walk about and one of the hosts suggested that we got up for an early morning swim in the lake. which was in the grounds. And when I went on these trips, any of them, I really loved getting up early in the morning. I like to get up at like 6 o'clock and go and wander around the town that we were in, and really get a feel for the place. Because I always felt that before the traffic and the people, you really got to see a place for what it looked like, away from all the kind of bustle and sort of negotiating yourself around people, to look at things. And I would get up and I would walk along La Croisette in Cannes, or along the seafront in Limassol, or wherever I happened to be, just to get some idea of what the place was like. So this really appealed to me, this kind of let's get up at 6 o'clock and go and swim in the lake before breakfast. So that's wonderful. I'm going to do that. And I got ready in the morning and I went down to the edge of the lake where some of the others were going into the water. They had a kind of jetty thing with a changing room and a sauna as well, of course, for you to go and use and then jump straight into the lake. And it was the beginning of September and it was quite cold. It was unexpected for me, I have to say, because coming from southwest England, everything was still really hot. And to see mist over the lake in the morning, and the kind of birds flying over in skeins and everything starting to turn, sort of purple and brown and things like that, the landscape. It was lovely. But like I said, just a little bit cold. But I stepped off. I went down to the jetty and there was a ladder going down and I stepped down. And as I walked down, I was looking down into the water. It was really, really clean. You could drink from it. But because there's so much peat everywhere, it was sort of seeped into the water. And as I got down to sort of my ankles, not very deep, I kind of looked down, I couldn't really see my feet. And then by the time I got to my knees, I couldn't see my feet at all because the water was so peaty. And that was it. I couldn't swim because I didn't know what was beneath me. I had a little bit of vertigo then. And it completely spooked me. And it put me off wild swimming in lakes for quite a long time, I have to admit. But then I moved to Norway. And at first I approached wild swimming with kind of a little bit of caution. It sounded a bit dicey. And it was like something that you maybe needed a bit of training for. And I think people are quite, they try to keep it a little bit mystical, don't they? So it sounds a bit exciting. But in reality, it's just swimming out in nature. It's not swimming in a pool or something that's man-made. It's just going in a lake or the sea or the river or whatever. But it's never fancy. And it's never fancy here. There are no beautiful pontoons, although they might look beautiful on photos. I'm sure they do. And I take a lot of pictures of them, I have to say. And there are no attendants waiting with towels. There's nowhere to get changed. And it's usually just something like a seashore or the lake shore. And you wade in quite often through weed and not knowing what's under your feet. But people still leap in. It can be really cold and quite a shock to the system. But you adjust. The shock passes. The cold becomes bearable. And the water that looked so hostile from the shore suddenly feels quite exhilarating and exciting. And you climb out a few minutes later feeling kind of triumphant about it. As though you've achieved something that's far more impressive than just swimming for a little bit. And that, I think, maybe explains a lot of the Nordic fascination with cold water. Modern life is surprisingly comfortable. Most of us spend our days indoors. We go from work into our car, back home, and do the same thing. Just keep doing that. We often get food delivery, so we don't even have to leave the house, do we? We have carefully regulated temperature, and we avoid any kind of inconvenience with the touch of a screen. Wild swimming kind of asks something else of us, something different. It's a bit more raw, isn't it? It demands that we be fully present, rather like going to the cabin. When you go to the cabin here in Norway, you leave things behind usually. You leave technology behind. Lots of them don't have electricity. They don't have hot and cold running water. And there's usually no phone reception. And people like that. They like to be able to get away from things. You can't worry about emails while you're stepping out into a Norwegian fjord. You're not thinking about tomorrow's to-do list while lowering yourself into a mountain lake. and your attention narrows instantly to the water, the temperature, and the very immediate question of whether your heart is still functioning properly. It's mindfulness, Nordic style, that connection to nature freelufts live. Less scented candles and more involuntary gasping. Of course, the obsession also makes perfect sense when you consider where people live. The Nordic countries are blessed with a lot of water. I can't think how many lakes there are in Norway. It's tens of thousands. Some of them are very small, admittedly, and some of them are very high up and in inaccessible places. But it feels like every village has a lake. We have a lake in our village, which is, I could almost throw a stone into it from our house, actually. And they appear around every corner. The coastline feels endless. There are little tiny beaches that hide between granite rocks. Forest paths often lead unexpectedly to places that are so beautiful, they look as though they belong on the cover of a travel magazine. And unlike many parts of the world, these places feel surprisingly accessible. You might have a long drive somewhere. I mean, we have a lake near us, it's probably a 6-kilometre drive. It's about 4 miles. Off the normal road, down a track. It's gravel, but I mean, I don't think you'd want to go down there in the winter. And when you get there, it's just a little parking space. But the lake is amazing, absolutely amazing. Really, really beautiful. And you'd happily want to spend the day there or even longer. But at these lakes, you don't need to book anything. You don't need a membership. And you don't need a plan even as such. All you do is just grab your stuff and you head outside and eventually you'll come across somewhere to swim. Some of the best swimming spots aren't famous at all. In fact, they're known only to locals who've often been returning for generations. And many of the lakes have names that aren't even on the maps. So they might be talking about, one that we go to, Trollsvan, for example. And you have to really look for it and really hunt for it and you can't find it. And especially if they're smaller lakes, because they have local, colloquial names. So you can find yourself looking for ages on a map if you're not local to the area and not find it at all. But every summer, people will return, introducing children to the same swimming spots that they once learned to swim in themselves. And perhaps that's another reason why wild swimming feels so important here. It isn't just exercise, it isn't just getting outside, it's a kind of special summer tradition. Because if there's one thing that people in the Nordics understand, it's that summer should never be taken for granted. The moment that we feel that summer started, we want to grab it. And we want to grab it right up until that very last moment because it's so brief. And after months of harsh winter, nobody wants to waste any kind of sunny time indoors. We want to be out, which is another reason why everybody kind of moves outside. Doors and windows are open. We eat outside. The terraces turn into outdoor dining areas that are used all the time, even when it's raining. Just cover it up with something. We carry coffee outside into parks, boats appear in the harbours, and gardens fill with people determined to absorb every possible minute of sunlight. We want to get our vitamin D in. The water reminds you that you're alive. It wakes you up. It's got a life of its own, hasn't it? It's an entire ecosystem. Goodness only knows what's going on beneath the water, especially in some of these very deep lakes. But it interrupts that constant background hum of modern life. You might sit there and look at your phone for a few minutes, but then you put it down and you kind of look at the lake. You might look at it again. And eventually the phone just gets put to one side. Who's interested in that? Because for a few minutes, everything else falls away. It's just the lake. You feel the sun on your shoulders. You hear the gulls overhead. And you notice the smell of the pine trees drifting from the shore. You pay attention. And that's what wild swimming is all about. And I'll see you in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters so you can get an email when I release a new episode. It's a quick and easy way to keep up with all things Nordic living. Please visit livinganordiclife.com. You can listen to Living a Nordic Life on lots of podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and plenty of others. If you've enjoyed the Living a Nordic Life podcast, why not leave me a rating? So that's the end of Living a Nordic Life for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.